Friends have often said we don't buy a car, we buy a story. And those stories start in our formative years where we plant our butts in the back seats of our parents' cars that they picked good, bad, or indifferent. For me, at least a portion of my formative years, well, that was Volvos. And back then, they were about as sexy as a bread box. Now they're all swoopy and they have fancy technology and the whole company's been reimagined, at least as we saw recently with their new SUV. But now things are becoming all the more serious because they're bringing out a whole new car, like a real car, not a truck. So let's check back in with Volvo and see how the story continues. Today we start out with a bit of car porn. So you and I have spent a lot of time talking about the Volvo engines as of late, but this is our first opportunity to see one naked. So a bit of a recap, this is a 2-liter 4-cylinder direct injected gasoline engine. And it comes in a bit of different flavors. The first flavor is a 2-liter 4-cylinder direct injected gas engine with a turbocharger. So basically the turbocharger down here. And that puts out 250 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at 1,500 RPM and stays flat all the way up to 4,400 RPM. And then there's this one, which is a 2-liter direct injected 4-cylinder gasoline engine, but it adds a supercharger here. And basically what that does, it hands off from the supercharger up to about 3,500 RPM down to the turbocharger at above 3,500 RPM, and it changes the output, so it's 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Now that comes in at a bit of a higher engine speed, 2,200 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 5,500 RPM. Then there is effectively what we have here, which is a completely naked bucket of bones here that gives us an additional electric motor back here, and this is what makes the basis of the T8. Now sadly we're not going to be driving this in today's episode. We will come in a later episode where we drive one with an electric motor back here that drives the rear wheels only, and that works in conjunction with a starter generator motor over here. So that effectively rear wheels here provides boost to the front wheels and more efficiency. So the question is, in the T5 and T6, how does this work on the road? Welcome to these stunning roads high above La Costa del Sol. As breathtaking as that is, we need to unpack the pulling power of this engine. But we've driven this engine before. It's really this engine in this application. And what's really changed here is we have a vehicle that is lower to the ground, so lower center of gravity, but also one that is lighter, which is more important. Now, like in the XC90, there are different driving modes here. So we're going to start in the regular, everyday comfort mode. They even call it everyday use. So let's put our foot into this thing. There's plenty of power here. Like, yeah, this is a 3,860 pound car, and yes, that is a 4-cylinder engine, but you would not feel at a loss for power, especially what we did there, which was not only accelerating from almost a dead stop, but going up a hill. Now let's try something different, and let's take a step down, go to the eco mode, which is the blah, celery mode, things we don't get excited about, but still, let's put our foot into it, see if it goes. It kind of goes. It doesn't hold the gears as long, so it's a combination of the throttle mapping changes and the transmission mapping changes. So effectively, it's trying to give you better fuel economy by optimizing the gear. But we're not here for comfort or like eco celery mode. We're here for dynamic mode, which they also call high performance in Swedish. So let's put our foot into this thing. And what changes here is, yes, the throttle mapping changes, but notice the gear hasn't changed. And I don't want to meet the local constable, so I'm definitely going to slow down at this point. So it really holds the gear significantly in this mode, like transforms the dynamics of the car completely. Now, that happened in the XC90, but what happened here is this car is actually quick, like almost fast. Because think about it, it's what? Over 500 pounds lighter with the same engine. So that's why it can actually pick up and go much quicker. Now, a couple of side notes here. The sound of the engine, I gotta tell you, I don't love. You know, yeah, it's plenty of power. You don't feel like you're at a loss for power, but you're at a loss for that, like that supple sound you get in like a beautiful straight 6, or even a beautifully like finely tuned V6. it's more of an oral experience than pulling power. And then second, this like transmission, you don't have paddles here, and of course you're not going to get a manual in a car like this, but you don't have paddles here. You can shift here. I gotta be honest, this is not something that's like intuitive. But overall, I'm kind of shocked. A Volvo with some grunt. So our car porn theme continues, but here we need a little imagination. So do you remember the riddle of what do Volvos and Corvettes have in common? Answer being a transverse composite leaf spring. But in this naked example, we have this large electric motor from a Cumming T8. We'll come back to you on a full episode of that vehicle. Well, there's no room for the transverse composite leaf spring. So what is the solution? Well, if you ever wanted a Volvo slammed on bags, well, here you go. Also multi-links back here. In the front, double wishbones, and then these very large adjustable dampers up front. Now, separating out these two pieces, notice there is quite a bit of distance. Really, the secret going on here is pushing this bit farther forward in the car, which would theoretically have an impact on driving dynamics. So how does that all translate out to the road? So twisty, beautiful roads overlooking a stunning lake, not exactly the domain of a Volvo. But still, we need to unpack driving dynamics, and like pulling power, there are the different settings, because this car we're driving is fitted with the air ride, not the transverse leaf spring in the rear. So let's go back down to Eco, the blah, celery mode, put our foot into it, see what happens going around a corner here. Oh yeah, there's definitely some lean, and there's actually, it kind of rolls onto itself in the rear back there. Something we've experienced in the XC90, but here not as much because you don't have as much weight going to that side. Okay, but now let's step up to the everyday use, the comfort. Put our foot into it, go around this turn here. Not as much lean, definitely more controlled here. I would say that roll onto itself in the rear is gone. There's still a little bit lean to the side. But we've got this beautiful road here, so let's use it in dynamic mode. Put our foot into it, go up the hill, again, plenty of power. But you know what? Not a huge difference between comfort and dynamic. I would say that it takes away most of the lean to the side and virtually all of that squat and roll onto itself in the rear. So significantly more composed. Is it an AMG or a BMW M car? No. But is it like a Volvo from years past? Definitely not. Like, it doesn't embarrass itself on these roads here, even when you get down to like a small one-lane road here and you want to put your foot into it and you have it to yourself. Like, it's kind of fun. A Volvo, actually fun. And one that's not really small. And not Polestar. Yet.
Now this is the point of our story where you and I need to speak some legalese like a bunch of fancy lawyers, or at least ones employed by the US government. You see, when it comes to autonomous driving, there are really 4 to 5 levels or stages. It starts out with level 0, which is all the autonomy of a Chia Pet. Then it moves up to level 1, which is like an electronic stability control system. Then it moves up to level 2, which you and I have driven over the past 2 to 3 years in some Mercedes-Benz cars, the Distronic Plus systems, which means the car will drive itself for up to 15 seconds. Then there's level 3, which is only in a Tesla, and you probably famously saw a picture of a guy fast asleep at 75 miles an hour behind the wheel of a Model S. And basically what the car can do is it can drive long distances at high speeds unless it senses like some sort of like major traffic pattern change or some like major issue, then it will require some driver involvement. Then there's level 4, and basically outside of cars that have Google splattered all over them, or outside of San Mateo or San Francisco County, no one is doing this. And that's because the lawyers and governments, well, they don't know what they don't know yet, and they're still trying to sort it out. So that's all fine and good, but how do we apply this whiz-bang technology to cars, well, from Sweden that can also detect a moose?
Okay, so these times, they are changing. So instead of beautiful backcountry roads of Malaga and Marbella and La Costa del Sol, we're getting on the motorway. And we're getting on the motorway for a very specific reason. We're going to let the car drive itself. We did this trick in a Mercedes, so why don't we try it with something else? It's called autopilot. And to engage the system, we have to interrogate the different systems here. We don't want adaptive cruise control. We want pilot assist. Set it here, and I've got it at 120 kilometers an hour, which is about the speed limit. And let's let it drive itself. I'm going to take my foot off the accelerator. We're coming around a nice turn with a big truck there, so this is a hell of a lot of trust in a pre-production car. Friends, or should I say amigos, mira! The Volvo is driving itself around a corner. So, how are you? It's been a while since we've chatted like this. We're going over a bridge. A little nerve-wracking. It's hard to trust this thing. And it's not even yelling at me yet to put my hands on the wheel. And notice the car is slowing down because of the truck. Check this out. Hands still folded. Please do not try this at home. Yeah, big truck in front of us. Now, let's try passing it and see if it passes the truck in autopilot mode. Okay, we're still, I believe we are still in, yeah, we're back in autopilot mode. Okay, we're gonna pass 2 trucks with hands folded. Again, please do not try this at home. Oh yes, this is nerve-wracking. Yeah, of course, I gotta say it. Look, Ma, no hands! And actually, she drove a Volvo. So look, Ma, no hands in your car! Oh, we almost made it past the truck. Okay, so here's the catch. It won't let you do this more than 15 seconds. So if you want to pull this party trick on your friends, you got to put your hands back on the wheel like within 15 seconds, or they will see that same, I guess, like, no, it's not fully autonomous. We can split hairs. Figure this is like stage 2, where it's basically the lawyers have decided we don't know what we don't know. So why don't we put it back into this mode here again. Ready? Okay. And let's see if it goes into the tunnel by itself. So now it's lowering its speed a little bit. Actually, no, I set the speed at 105. I shouldn't be going this fast. So if you are the local constable in Marbella, you didn't see how fast I'm going right now. Now it's saying to apply steering, but let's see if it, oh, we wanted to make it to the tunnel. Okay, apply steering. Okay, so we're getting to the end of the tunnel. Let's try this trick again. Hands off the wheel. Can I just say, while the car is taking care of itself, the roads in southern Spain, absolutely stunning. This like tax scheme thing they have here, VAT or whatever, AP, it works quite well because the roads are like glass. And with that, I think I'm gonna start driving again. So in summary, what do we got? Well, to answer that question, we need to separate this into 2 parts. There is the car itself, and there is the general business health of Volvo Group SE, or whatever they call their company. First, the car. So if I'm honest, Volvo was always a very good car, especially coming from a guy who was reared on Volvos. It was the car you suggested to your aunt, to someone that was incredibly sensible, or maybe a university professor that was sick of Subarus and had a couple more bucks in the bank. But really, with the changes they have done here, and it's a function of, yes, they moved the wheels here, and the dimensions are squatted here, and the car is wider, and the engine is a whole different interpretation from a guy who ran engines at Volkswagen. All of that is great. However, the bottom line is, more than the sum of parts now makes this a car you would suggest not just to your aunt or said university professor, you would suggest this to your friend who actually likes cars, because dynamically, it's a car you want to drive, and it's a wonderful car to be in. And I didn't really expect that in a Volvo. So that's the car, but really the business side of it. This represents Volvo in the future. Yes, we talked about this with the XC90, but more so this, because this is kind of like a signpost of what is to come of future cars. Now, Volvo loves to discuss this whole, well, by 2018, the oldest car in our lineup will be the XC90, and the average age will be 1 year old, which, yeah, that sounds great and all, but really what's happened here is they made a humongous investment of money, And it's something akin to what like GM puts in their whole R&D budget for one entire year, General Motors. So really what's happening here is, yes, this is a great interpretation of one car, but what you and I need to focus on is how does that translate to real cars in the future? And I gotta say, and gonna sound somewhat cliche, the future looks rather bright for Volvo Global Cars SE, or whatever it's called. So let's put this aside, and now I'm gonna turn this around to you guys and leave you with a question. The question is this: yes, this is now the S90. Previously, not at all competitive to an E-Class, a BMW 5 Series, or even now Cadillacs like CTSs and that stunning new CT6, which is priced about the same. So the question is very simple. What car would you choose if this was the car you fancy? Would it be the S90, or would it be one of those Germans or Americans or even a Japanese car that I'm not mentioning here? And don't just tell me which one you would choose, but why you would choose it. And for good measure, let me know what region of the world you hail from. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes or Google Play. And number two, a fun fact. So way back in the day, Volvo, they did put some style in some of their cars, but they did not design them in-house. There were two coupes that came in like the 80s that were designed by Italian design firm Bertone. Really, check it out. Until I see you next time, most likely not by the stunning Mediterranean Sea, sadly, I wish you bis später.